Today we're here with Director of Restaurant Technology for Five Guys, Hospitality Kingpin, Penn State alumni, honored as one of Pittsburgh's 50 finest young professionals, Tiger Woods competition, fast casual industry titan, MJ Worsham. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Honored to be on the list of guests that you've had. I mean, it's kind of a who's who in the industry, so I feel fortunate to be here.
Yeah, well, listen, you're one of them.
Tube socks, boy, about to pop the lunchbox. Tube socks, boy, about to pop the lunchbox.
Let's start from the top. How'd you get into business? That's my first question to most folks. There's so many similarities in that stories, and it's so inspiring. So how'd you get into business?
I went to Penn State, as you mentioned, and I graduated with a degree in hospitality management, but I did not want to go into operation. I knew that I would get burnt out. I was going to go to culinary school at one point. So I looked at literally any alternative path with that degree. So think, Ecolab at the time, the Expedias and Pricelines of the world. And one of the options that came up was point of sale. And so I went to work for Micros before Oracle purchased them, and I did major account implementation. And that was in 2011. Coincidentally, that was also when we started to see the rise of newer age point of sale, right? It wasn't just the Posy Touches and Micros and Alohas and Squirrels of the world. It was Square in its infancy, POS Lavu, Breadcrumbs, Revel way back. So at the time that I was getting in, the industry was drastically changing, right? We started to then see delivery providers and the need to integrate, and restaurant tech just kind of blew up and do its own thing. So I feel very fortunate that I picked this path to get where I am, because I don't know if there really was any better time. It was very fortuitous, but I love it. I've become sort of a big restaurant tech nerd. My girlfriend will often roll her eyes when I tell her certain things, but it's what I do, right? It's a passion, and it only gets more and more exciting by the day. And that's what's really, really great about it.
Is she rolling your eyes when you first enter a restaurant and you're looking around and you see, oh, they're using toast? Is that when it's happening, or you're saying in generally? Generally, you're talking about a restaurant tech.
All the above. I mean, we went out to dinner. I won't name names, but there was an outage with a large POS vendor, and there was a sign on this restaurant that they couldn't accept gift cards. And I just started laughing, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And then I go to explain it to her, and she's like, I didn't need the whole explanation." But yeah, no, I do that, right? I ask people, how do you like your system, right? I used to have this party trick where we'd go out to dinner, and people would be like, "Oh, we can't split the check." And I'd look over and be like, "Well, actually, you're using Res 3700. I can tell you exactly how to split the check on that point of sale system." And then magically they could split our check. So sometimes it comes in handy for other things, but for the most part, it's just being observant of what people are using and then asking how they like it and just getting honest feedback.
You mentioned something very important, which is you really were at a crossroad when you joined the industry of legacy POS meets cloud POS, but there's not really a winner in this new world, right? Or best practices yet, right? You're kind of at the beginning of it. What are some of the things you were pushing back then that's obvious today? Like today it's obvious, it's table stakes, but you were in 2011, banging on doors and saying, we must do this.
I mean, the cloud, I think you just get so much efficiency from the cloud, right? Whether it's version management, all the things that enables that just kind of become those table stakes items, real-time data, the ability to manage menus at scale, way easier, right? I mean, you're not looking at like, okay, I have to log in to this configurator, make a menu push. It's going to take 3 minutes for that to make it to the terminal reboots. It becomes this whole thing, right? There's so many things that can be done without any end user even knowing at this point. And that's all enabled by the cloud. So I think the cloud is one big item. I think another thing is having a separate solution for labor reporting, stuff like that. At this point, what's funny is the POS industry really went from a bunch of vendors that try to be a jack of all trades and ended up being a master of none. And now you start to see the unified commerce platform, and some of the vendors are doing a really good job through M&A and whatnot with making these great ecosystems. But for the longest time, people just relied on their POS for everything. And then people start to realize now, if you look back, most restaurants, the POS is just a glorified calculator, right? It has to be able to bring orders in from different places. It has to be able to take time punches and then send all that information elsewhere. And that's where all the decisions are made, right? Whether that's EI layer is, your ERP system, however you manage that in between, then going to a data warehouse and payroll and stuff like that. So people have really adopted that. And I think that's one of the things that I wouldn't say that it was rocket science to make that sort of suggestion, but it certainly, with an industry that is prone to be change adverse, it certainly took some lobbying, and I think enough people kind of had to get on board for the rest of the industry to follow suit.
I love that. We'll get into a couple of the things you mentioned, but what drew you to Five Guys in 2019 initially? A little less than 2,000 location, iconic brand. I eat Five Guys at least twice a month. And by the way, I eat super healthy. So me eating twice a month something, it's like amazing. And the best fries in the business. What drew you to them in 2019?
So at the time I was living outside of the DC area and working for a smaller brand actually before that. And then I went to work for a consulting firm where I did some work with Five Guys and then ultimately made that jump over. At the time in that area, right, if you want to stay in your geo, there weren't really a ton of options for growth in big brands, right? It's really Five Guys, right? In that area is the big one, unless you get into the hotel side and go to like Choice or Marriott or HMS Host is located nearby. It was a good fortune of meeting our CIO, Eric Pearson, 2 years prior at Mertech. We spoke on a panel together. I'd met him a number of times and become friends with him through various industry events in the area. Ultimately, it just kind of became one of those things where I was like, man, like this guy's great. The company culture seems great, right? You know, it is very much employee customer experience, food quality, consistency centered, right? Not a lot changes. That's by design. Why wouldn't I want to work for a company that's both respected by the industry and also, you know, highly regarded by their employees? And so it really became kind of a no-brainer. And then when I was approached, I was like, yes, 100%, not even a question. And I'm super happy with where I am. And it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years. A member of the generation that doesn't stay in a job more than 2.5 years on average, right? It's crazy to think that it's been 5 years and I could be happier.
Because I met your boss as well at dinner and he's there for like 15 plus years. Am I making this up?
The longevity and tenure at our company is outrageous, right? I mean, like I'm at 5 years and I am like still like down in our IT department. I mean, it's kind of wild. I mean, we have somebody on our staff who actually came over from another vendor, but she was involved with store 6.
Wow.
Way back. And like, so she's been adjacent for so long. And there's like a loyalty, you know, to the employees. That loyalty is reciprocated. But at the same time, I mean, can't say enough good things about, you know, about the company culture. And
what is it? I hear so many good things about the culture. What is it in terms of culturally you guys are doing at the store level that is showing up as great customer service? And then how is that different from the culture at the corporate office? Because usually it's very different.
I think that the idea is that everyone is treated with respect, and we at the corporate office understand that nobody gets paid unless we sell burgers and fries, right? So we are hyper focused on quality, system uptime, resolving issues, right? The end user in our store is the most important person, not anybody else in the office, right? Not department heads, right? They need to be able to facilitate that experience and produce quality food. We all understand that, and we're all very passionate about making sure that that happens. And so I think that sort of ties in. We're still family owned, right? So I think that there's a huge aspect of that, and it is a bit of an anomaly, I would say, in the world of business. I don't think many people can say that, but at the same time, happy that I was able to find it, and happy that, you know, people understand and see the value in what we do.
Yeah. MJ, it makes sense why you broke your promise of not going into restaurant, but you picked a brand that, you know, that has built such a great culture and has been so supportive of you. If you look back in the last 5 years, your biggest tech accomplishment, if you had to call one of the many things you've done?
So I would say at the beginning of my work with Five Guys, I worked on the release of our international app and online ordering website. So we are in 24 countries. So there was a big push to do that. And then in 2022, we released a custom bespoke app here in North America as well. So I've been able to be a part of the launch and design and management of both of those, which I think is really cool. And, you know, what we did here, I think was super cool with, you know, understanding that the pandemic, I don't want to say that there's an upside, but it did greatly accelerate the digital space for restaurants, right? I think that people understand the need and that it is not retracted, you know, in the way that people maybe would have thought after the pandemic. People are in a new habit. And then to support that, you have to have channels that reduce friction, provide convenience, make people want to come back, especially with the, you know, digital only brands. Magically overnight, you know, you could have 10 new competitors that don't have a building. How do you fight them when their whole play is digital, right? And you have to sort of balance that. So, you know, I think the reception's been really solid, and, you know, we've seen some great metrics come out of that. And ultimately, you know, we understand that that's the path, and we'll never be a brand that focuses on trying to get to 100% digital or, you know, sits at that 80% number. But at the same time, we know that it's going to happen, and, you know, we're excited about some of the stuff we have in the pipeline.
You just mentioned virtual kitchens, you know, like 100% digital restaurant, basically virtual kitchens. What is one thing they can learn from you a brick and mortar and vice versa? What is one thing we can learn from them? Because for their fair share of mistakes they have made, they're also doing a lot of things that is on the frontier of performance marketing. So is there one thing we can pick up from them and they can learn from us?
I think that if you turn off the mindset of managing a digital strategy and an in-store strategy, right, and you just focus on digital, like you'll consider a lot more. And then if you can find a way to not silo those things and make sure that they're cohesive, then that's a good thing that we can learn from them, right? Because obviously they're all in on the digital side. For them, I think that they have to understand that there are a lot of people that look at buying food as a very robotic sort of situation, right? It's very, decision logic, right? I'm hungry. What am I hungry for? This. When do I want it, right? And so that person doesn't care about the guest experience as much, right? Because they're just trying to get fed. But there are a lot of people that do, right? And so I think that they've done a good job of trying to recreate that with the branding, right? Some of these national partners and brands that they were able to sort of license that make a ton of sense because there's the brand recognition, even if they don't have a store. But at the same time, how do you portray that guest experience, right? When there is no touch point. And solving for that is tough. And there will be people, I think, that just will not really engage with those brands as often because they still see this is a hospitality transaction and they're not getting that in some of those spaces.
Is there a brand out there you look at and you respect and you're like, oh, they do good stuff. I admire them. Anyone out there you're willing to call out?
Well, there's a couple, right? I'm going to say two. One would be Kava. I worked with the Kava team when I worked at NCR years ago. They flew me to LA to install the first store that they put out west. And I love that brand. If they're listening, please come to Pittsburgh. What they've done has been great, right? I mean, Brett and that team and the Zoe's acquisition was a little interesting at the beginning, turned out to be a great idea, right? Their growth plans have been awesome. The IPO has been super successful, right? They've also done it the right way, right? With paying employees well and producing a great quality product. I can't say enough good things about them and the food. Locally here, we have a brand called Permani Brothers, and they have embraced the Pittsburgh culture. And obviously they are a huge, legacy piece of it. Some of the things they've done from like a marketing standpoint are just so creative. To me, it's just things that we don't do. It's things that like my brain doesn't operate that way, right? So for example, Kenny Pickett recently traded to the Eagles. Day they post, you have a Kenny Pickett jersey, bring it to our location on Sunday. We'll give you a $25 gift card. Day without a sporting event. It's a day where stores are going to be light, right? And you can get people in the location, give them something that will incentivize a return visit. We honor the people with gift cards spend more than just that amount, right? So you're getting an incremental sale there, and you get great free publicity because who's not going to just take that and put it on the news, right? All you have to do is post it somewhere and zero ad spend, it's going to get picked up organically. So I'd say two different sort of situations, one that's focused on a region and a very specific brand. That would be one that Kava's growth and whatnot has been admirable.
Absolutely. The Five Guys are at 24 countries right now. Favorite visit so far? You guys just opened in Korea too, by the way. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know, and I have not been, which I would love to. I would say that my favorite was probably Singapore. So I flew out there to work the first install, and I will say that dealing with time zones and resellers and whatnot across multiple languages and whatnot can be a struggle. So going was super helpful. But then as a foodie too, the culture there in general is awesome. And it's such a clean city and has so many unique attributes. But the hawker centers and being able to go in and get crazy good food for nothing, right? And then exploring just that island. It was a lot of fun. It was brutal on my sleep schedule, but it was an awesome experience. And it was also very easy to get around. If people are listening have never been to Asia and want to, it's a good sort of like gateway country because it's very English heavy. So it's not daunting. It's not really intimidating in terms of trying to maneuver your way through, but it's a really cool spot.
I love that. For a lot of IT leaders or technology leaders in the restaurant space, there's a lot of misconception. The misconception is you guys are sitting there and configuring menus all day long. But a lot of your job is, and you mentioned this earlier, it's selling an idea, a vision to all the stakeholders. That requires a great deal of communication skills and a great deal of negotiations. Can you speak a little bit to that on how much of that is your job versus the technical aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, it is shifted, right? Over the years, there was a time where I was just sitting behind a computer, entering in 800 bottle wine lists, right? And doing stuff like that. And that was fun, right? And that taught a lot, right? And I think getting to see different operations has helped all the way to now. And so there's a business acumen aspect, and then there's also an internal kind of translation aspect, right? Because we have to both champion the idea internally, but then also be able to speak about it at a high level on the technical side. And they're very different conversations. So I think understanding your audience and breaking things down in a way that makes sense, right? But more importantly, not touting the bells and whistles. And, the uptime is 99.7%, and this is how much they spent in R&D last year. The people in operations don't care about that. They care, how does this help us make more money, be more efficient, provide a better product, provide a better experience? And if you can focus on those things, right, then it becomes a lot easier. And right, so a lot of these are the features that will help, right? Building an ROI case, right, for those that are more on the financial minded side. And then ultimately, just getting buy-in and answering questions. And typically those conversations will lead to some sort of change that we didn't think about, because we're so removed from the operations side at this point that we're like, oh, we didn't consider that, right? And then we have to go back and make an adjustment. But that's why these are collaborative, cross-functional teams working on these projects, because everybody's looking at it from a different lens, and the value in that is huge. But ultimately, you kind of have two different sort of brains, right? The negotiating and terms and SLA brain, and then there's the, this is how it makes us a better brand and lets us produce a better product.
MJ, this was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for making some time. I really enjoyed us grabbing dinner, and more importantly, really enjoyed just chatting a little bit, understanding how you guys have not only built 1,800 locations, but you're making them all speak to each other, great customer service, great culture, and then all of it translating digitally as well. So you've built an amazing tech stack over there, and we're very inspired to chat with you for a little bit.
Appreciate the invite, and happy to talk shop, and look forward to chatting more in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
To fly with me. Tube socks, boy, about to pop the lunchbox. Tube socks, boy.